Good morning, everyone. How you doing? So it's the end of the week. Phew. Got the weekend coming up, and I wonder how you're doing. It's been quite intense, isn't it? And we've got the new moon today, which is great. And hopefully Mercury is going to go direct again. So who knows what kind of delights and delicacies we have lined up for us this weekend. Now, if you've been watching the other shows, you'll know that it's been a bit tear-jerky in the last couple of days. For instance, we were talking about suffering a necessity in terms of the human condition just yesterday. And there were comments coming in. I just couldn't even read them out because I felt so touched and moved and inspired by people's stories and sharings that I was literally a blubbering wreck. And Carl, my husband, as you know, he was also crying as well. So we've had that kind of effect going on. We've also had a discussion. In fact, Sarah's here right now in the chat room. Sarah's Energetics. Morning. Thanks for joining us. She was with us as a guest on Tuesday with Rick Purcell, and we were talking about what does your body know that you don't yet know. And we're also talking about just, well, so much really. And so this is the end of week 2, and this is going to be our 8th podcast. And I'm delighted to be bringing back to the Barefoot Broadcast, lovely Felix Hyde. Let's bring him on now, shall we? Felix!
Hi, thank you so much for having me back.
Oh my God. Well, of course I was going to have you back because the show we did was amazing. How have you been? It's been ages since we've actually had a good chat, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a bit of a roller coaster from my last grid work trip. I went to Washington, DC. And rework the grids over there with Indigo Angel. And then within 2 weeks, on 4th of July, I moved house, passed my driving test and got a puppy. And moved in with my partner. So it's, everything completely flipped on its head and went in a completely different direction, which I saw coming, but having that all coming through on Independence Day was quite a thing after working in America. So yeah, it's
Vatican as well last year at the end of last year.
Yeah, I did the City of London in August prior to the Queen passing. And then following that we did the Vatican in December, and then the Pope passed on that one. And then we had
are you making some kind of link?
Possibly. I think it's more so it reworks how energy is harvested. So we take out the density locks and the seal systems that are running through the city to counteract the effects of black magic that run through the grids. This might be a bit of a little bit difficult for some people that are watching because they might not understand fully what you're talking about. Do you want to just explain a little bit about your skill set before we? Okay.
Because I really will be linked into what we talk about today. Obviously, I know what you do.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Perfectly. So I work as a holographic energetic restructurer. When I work with a client one-to-one.
Hang on. Let me just take you back. Okay. Holographic energetic restructurer. In layman's terms, go on.
In layman's terms, I see through a multi-dimensional lens, which presents as a holographic field. So when I'm looking at somebody, I see multiple structures, the multi-dimensional body, the universal tree of life as their initiation point, which then links in through the chakra system. It links into multiple different bodies, and that connects through their entire universal structure. And what's held within that, it acts as the multidimensional body or the universal tree of life is the standpoint for the light body. It's the origins of that. So when I look into that, I can then access into places of origin, intergalactic grids, and their own innate history. But
Yeah.
a lot of the information is really, really held up and tied behind seal systems and density locks, which is essentially what kind of runs through the Earth grid. So our body mirrors the Earth as well.
Yeah.
So where we kind of get caught up in our own history, that can then be tied to layers of the Earth body and also into the galactic body as well.
Okay.
So it's not, sorry, go on.
I want to simplify it even more, almost as if my kids want to understand it. So here's my giving it a go. In a nutshell, if we think about like a circuit board, there are patterns and connection points between everything, and you see everything on an etheric basis, as well as in this reality that we're sat in right now. On many different levels. And so it's almost like a bit like if you were watching what's that Tom Cruise film where they bring up head-up displays and things, Minority Report, you know, where you see in sci-fi films that they like bring up an overlay and there's like writing coming up, so you can see real life reality, also grids overlapping it. So it's almost like you can see a different form of reality that not everyone else can feel or see. Lots can. And you can work with the energies in a way that not many people are conscious of.
Absolutely.
And you create more flow. So you can see where there might be blockages and stuck points, and you're able to make it flow. Does that sound
you hit the nail on the head there. And more recently I've been working to recode their energy systems. So where on Minority Report there may be writing within the holographic like computing system, if you will, I can then recode that and then allow it to kind of unlock multiple layers at the same time, which then brings forth a much stronger flow of your own natural current.
Excellent. And so, I mean, that is a bit like computing. You know, there are people who understand computers and can see where things are stuck and where you need a new bit of code to sort it all out, get it all working together. So you're like somebody who allows things to flow. In
a nutshell, definitely.
Sorry to be so reductive. I just want to make sure that everyone is totally on board, because I just assume that what I understand, everyone understands in the same way. And
that's a good way to do it, because sometimes when I just hand over to my team as well, it comes in more so as a coded transmission, which will then bring activation over the next 6 months for realigning your trajectories of awareness and then opening your field to this kind of new information. So,
excellent. And in fact, Sarah's energetics is saying, Felix, is that all?
Sure, sounds good, Sarah. I'd love that.
I will facilitate that for sure. Very happy to do that. So we're going to have a little chat about one of these kind of big questions that we've been puzzling over, for the last, 7 or 8 episodes. And each day we've had a different question, but they're all really about finding greater levels of peace and love and understanding and stuff like that. And today then we're talking about, can happiness be stained in the face of adversity? What came up for you when I first sent that over? Can you remember? What did you first think?
I think with all the trials and tribulations that we're all going through at the moment, I've always come back to finding the joy in my experience. And that's always kind of overridden a lot of the detriment. And I think within that, when we can repoint our perspectives and realize that actually, do you know what, there are people in a lot worse situations, then it kind of balances everything out, which then allows the fields to open in a very different way, which then draws more back in of the abundance that you've been kind of looking for, really.
So your experience of it then is more based on the fact that you can see behind what not everyone can see. So you can see it's all a bit of an illusion. What about before you could see it was an illusion?
I think
at some level, I think I was always able to see that things weren't quite right, but couldn't quite put my finger on it.
Right. So I think with that's a difficult, it's not really a difficult question, it's an interesting question, because with my history, I went through a lot of addiction and a lot of troubles to kind of get to where I am now, these realizations, but during those momentums, there was always like an essence of disillusionment, I suppose. And then as you're kind of like circulating through it, what I found was surrendering was the key to actually allowing it to shift. So no matter how shit it gets, just go with it and it will pass away. So,
yes.
Yeah.
We've got my executive producer, aka my husband, upstairs.
Okay.
Is that a kitten destroying the studio? We've got 2 more kittens, but the noise
Oh,
isn't
really?
coming from me, is it? What have you got in the background? Have you got a puppy or something?
That's one of our puppies. Yeah, this is a big puppy running around and playing with one of his toys. Yeah. The little one, it would be an absolute nightmare if I brought the little one in and had the big one playing with him, because we wouldn't hear a thing. The little one is like the size of my hands. It's a miniature Yorkshire Terrier. And the big one is a white Swiss Shepherd. So it's going to be like the size of a German Shepherd. And it's all white, so he looks like a wolf.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get a picture of him. I don't pick him up because again, game, set and match, going to be a nightmare. But he's a very, I want to find a better picture. There's one really cute one, where when we just got him, and I love it. I absolutely love this picture.
What do you know? What do you notice about the energetics between dogs and humans? Like, very cute.
Yeah, so that's Wolfie.
Yeah.
Oh, that way. Okay,
No,
well, that's not going to happen, is it?
Don't worry, he looks beautiful.
Humans and dogs. It's interesting because today was the first day that he didn't crap on the floor when we woke up. So, talking about finding happiness in the face of sustained in adversity, right? That was a challenge. This is Sirius.
Oh wow,
miniature Yorkshire Terrier. Yeah,
very
so
tiny.
He's really cute. He's literally like the size of my hand. So I think the energetic between human and dogs, when you kind of get over the difficulties of them crapping on the floor first thing in the morning, or destroying the sofa, then it actually, what I found, it was a great means to disconnect from technology and get outside. I felt like that was the calling for it, was to kind of re-engage with nature. My partner will probably say, "Don't lie, Felix," because I've been sat at my desk for like the past 2 weeks doing nothing but work. But what I did find was that it was a more engagement to get outside and to kind of just be, whilst they run around and do whatever they're going to do. So in that sense, it was definitely a raising of the vibration, just to kind of disconnect and just be in nature.
Okay, so there's your question answered, Carl. we have had similar situations with our puppy, who's now a 3-year-old that still destroys things.
Okay.
Yes. Match that with the kittens. Yeah, it can get a little bit interesting. So in terms of happiness, like, can it be sustained in the face of adversity? You were saying yes, you thought it could. What and obviously, like with things like dogs pooping first thing in the morning and like seeing beyond that, what do you think is going on in the world right now? Because obviously you've like I got to know you at the start, I think, of what has been called a pandemic by some, not by everybody, not by me,
definitely not by me either.
And like that was a massive adversity, and even though I didn't believe in it in the way that most other people believed in it, I still found myself being quite affected by it, and it felt to me like there was almost a spell or some kind of energetic overlaid that people were buying into. Given your skills and stuff, what did you notice? Would you concur with that there was some kind of...
I would definitely say that was very, very apparent. And I mean, even within that, the media control was one major part of that, which we all kind of know very well, all too well now.
They're already sowing the seeds for another
Yeah, they're attempting to. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't get the
It's really,
feeling
really not going to happen, though. No,
Mm.
no, definitely not. Okay. So it's interesting with the whole pandemic thingy. I never felt like I was entrapped. I never felt ensnared. But what I felt with that was that because I had surrendered myself to work with energy, to work with source, I basically kind of handed myself. I was like, right, this is too much. Take it over. I just went. This was after the dark night of the soul sort of stuff, handing everything over. From there, every experience of what would be heavy laden trauma, or scary or fearful, just was not impactful at all.
Wow.
So the process of that, and then moving into the pandemic, I found it very liberating because I didn't have to go into work at the time when I was working.
Yeah.
I could just go outside. There was no cars, there was no pollution, there was just clear blue skies, and I could just spend as much time out there as I wanted to, without having to worry about anything. And it was within that where big downloads were coming in about how to shift and change where I was going into what was to be. And that was really kind of a magical experience in and of itself. And then with the understanding of how to process the downloads and unravel them, that it just became such a magical experience because you had all that time to be with yourself and cultivate a deep, deep connection to you, and to your source. And that to me was such a gift. I think so that brought so much happiness for me, just to kind of develop that time to get to know myself again, within a chaotic situation. So yeah, I think it just depends on what people are kind of caught up in and what they necessarily believe. And also their current circumstances. I think everybody's kind of tied into something that they need to learn at the time or they need to do at the time. And it's just a case of recognizing all the feelings that is flooding through the body. Are they all yours? I think that's the first question to ask, because we look at like quantum soup or quantum spaghetti or string theory, realizing that we are so enmeshed with one another. And this is the same with healing as well. When we kind of start to heal ourselves and start pulling up information about people around us that are connected into that, it's actually the field sits so enmeshed, like multiple strands of spaghetti intertwined. And it's a case of isolating each strand, pulling them out, and then starting to heal the different aspects within that. And pulling back your own energy from the other strands of spaghetti and pushing it back out to the other ones. So
in fact, I think Sarah's energetic would really understand what you're saying about who does this belong to? Like, is it even yours? Because she studied access consciousness with all those guys.
Nice.
And one of the big questions that they're always asking is, you know, who does this belong to? And often you notice that when you're holding on to something that's not your truth, energy feels heavier, feels more dense. You feel more constricted, like you can't fully breathe. And of course, the moment you are able to recognize, oh, hang on, it's not mine, let it go, like return to sender.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best part. Absolutely. But as an extension of
you get
that
lighter,
as well,
don't you?
You get so much lighter. But as an extension of that, recognizing the sub-logos groups that are also playing within that energetic as well. So people that you've never even met before.
Sorry, sub-logos groups. So put that into normal language.
Subgroups of a collective field. So the logos being the collective, and then beneath that you've got sub-logos groups, which would be derived from the big collective, which will be interplaying within that energetic frequency of maybe distrust or abandonment. So what you're doing is you're also absorbing the energy of those people as well, that same energetic. And when you realize that 92% of that energy that you're playing in is actually theirs.
Yes.
And recognizing that, bringing it back to center, changing the lenses, the dimensional lenses, to the source essence eyes, and saying, oh, actually, does this align to my source essence? No, it doesn't. Okay. And within that, realizing, because you're activating your source self, you're then able to shift all of that collective frequency out and disconnect from your tree of life that's enmeshed with other people's trees.
Okay.
Right. So like the root systems that are over the root systems of the trees that are interwoven. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's pulling all of that up in one go.
I liked what you were talking about, the sublogos and the groups. And I've got a few comments I'd like to make about that, actually. But I can see that Sarah's come back with something. So she's saying, I think when being lied to and being aware we are being lied to, but not feeling the freedom to call it out, it's very similar to an abusive relationship dynamic. I have to feel empowered to feel happy. I'm going to have to listen to this one back. So Sarah, she uses questions to get clearer about things and to notice where there are blocks. Now, when you were talking about the sublogos, like the groups, I think at some level, I mean, obviously I was connected to lots of different people in different ways. And the feeling of wanting to save people. To see like if you could see that there was about to be a train crash or something, you'd want to tell as many people as possible. So I felt very, very pulled to share a message, because I thought there was something to be very cautious about. But of course, it hadn't yet happened, or people couldn't see that it had happened. And I found that very disempowering, wanting to say, hang on, look, we can't quite see the big picture, but I can see that, or I feel that I can see a particular scenario occurring. And I think I pulled into the desperate fear of witnessing something that was about to happen, but being powerless to do anything about it. And I feel like that fear in me grew and grew and grew. And I don't know if I was picking up on like past lives where something like that happened, future lives even, because I mean, I don't really, but like you, I don't think time really exists in the way that we see it do. But yeah, there was a whole huge heap of dynamics going on. And then another one, I think at some level, and I remember when my mum, when I was about in my 20s, my mum got cancer. And I think I remembered saying, take me instead. You know, like when you have these fights with your creator. And I was like, take me. I'm stronger. I can fight this. I've got more energy than my mum. And I think at some level, I've held on to that idea of, I'll do this so that other people don't have to do it. And I found myself getting quite ill, even though it made no sense at all. And I think I've been kind of sucked into a field of taking it on for other people. And so when I got conscious of that, I was like, oh, crikey, what have I been doing there? That's some game to be playing. But I'm sure there's been lots of healer types dragged into these things, as well as people from other groups.
Absolutely. Oh my God, that was just so perfect, because this leads into another topic that I really wanted to kind of get into today within this, is where you said that about your mom, and you're saying, let me take it instead, right? This actually acts as a trigger point for a contract or a soul contract, right? So where we're kind of interwoven with collective fields, and laden with really, really stiff, heavy energy that can cause illness, mental illness, physical fibromyalgia, things like that, is where we have agreed on an unconscious level or a conscious level to reprogram the collective mind, or reprogram the trauma that's running through the emotional body of the earth at the time. And what that kind of does is it instigates, usually through acts that we've done on a galactic basis, which can be running through levels of perpetrator energetics. We then move in between lives into a state of review to create something, usually from a grandiose perspective, because we think we can do all these things on the other side,
totally.
in the physical form, where we are atoning for our own miscreant behavior in the galactic field. So
Uh-huh.
we want to atone for that, and we say, right, I'm going to take on all of this energy. I'm going to understand it until I have healed everybody before myself. Or
Ah,
even within that, right, we can say that where we and then just need to download this information.
that's okay. Let me just explain what you're doing at the moment. People that like Felix speaks light language, so he hears language that comes through him with light codes, and it comes out of him. So I'm not trying to destroy your flow there, Felix.
No, perfect. So what they're also saying is atonement for shame. So where we hold on to much shame and belief system that we are like we've done something really, really awful way back when, rather than remembering our revolutionary pattern today, we still carry on that energetic and we say, I will not clear this. I will not stop clearing this until I've completely purified myself. And then there's it's like a double-edged sword within the contract. So you clear and clear and clear, get to the very end, but you're so laden with trauma by the end of it, is that it loops all the way back round. So then we get stuck in this loop cycle until we recognize the contract and then dissolve the contract to allow the fields to reorder, which then opens up more levels of freedom in yourself and not having to repeat the same experience over and over again. Yeah. So that's a part of the manifestation template where there's a technical hitch held within it. It's one of those images when like the anchor man falls off the chair and they put the screen up. That's one of those sort of situations.
Yes. And it's funny because right at the start you were saying at the start of that time that lots of people called the pandemic, you mentioned that you actually felt quite free because you'd already decided to give it all up and to say, this isn't my thing, you deal with it for me. I guess that's a bit like, if we could just remember that we could hand over all our worries.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Being done at that time rather than having to repeat all these
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I do. This gets a little bit more complicated now, though, with that one, because we are in an end of time period. So within the end of time period, there's a whole bunch of new things that have to be, well, not new things, old things that need to be resurfaced to review that would have linked into the fall of Atlantis, fall of Lemuria, where these similar energetics are running through. But because it's the end of time, or the end of a cycle, end of Kali Yuga, and the fall of a civilization, but in this case a not fall because it's going in a different way, we have to kind of work through a lot of these really, really heavier fear-based traumas that were existing back then, with destruction codes, destruction templates of Atlantis, destruction of Lemuria, and all of these other energetics that we wouldn't normally have to deal with until a specific time juncture. But linking that back, that's how we can kind of get the perspective that we've done this before. We don't need to do it again. We certainly don't need to do it again, but we can then start to correct these contracts and constructs and structures that are held in place to cause evolutionary catalyst change.
So I thank you for that. I imagine people that have a sense that there have been other civilizations, other times, and people that have that kind of cosmic sense that they've been here before, they're just going to totally understand what you're talking about. I think there's probably going to be some people that struggle.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Not sure about
that. Yeah.
But Sarah has totally got the flavor for this. So she's saying, because I said she uses questions to really unpick things, because the power of a question, it just sets up a possibility, doesn't it, for to realize something. But she's saying asking questions really took a hit over the last few years. And that's something that I found really quite shocking and devastating, actually. She's saying mind blown open. What would it take to dissolve all contracts? That's a great question.
Release, revoke, rescind.
Is that all you have to do? Say
release, revoke, rescind any oaths, vows, agreements.
Release, revoke,
rescind. Any oaths, vows, and agreements.
Any oaths, vows and agreements.
Yeah, and what I like to do is kind of identify what the contract is, so intuitively read the contract,
Uh-huh.
and then within that you can kind of get to the understanding as to what the storyline is. And when you kind of start to take that part out, it then collapses everything else down from a galactic sense all the way down to a physical sense,
Mm.
historically
Yeah.
to now, so
Yeah.
to speak. They run
Yes, because
alongside each other, but yeah.
I mean, that's also something that not everyone
Mm,
might understand is the fact that, you know, are we terrestrial? Are
mm,
we galactic? Are we intergalactic? All these different veils and
right.
constructs and ideas.
Yeah.
Squire of the Shires is listening and saying evolution. Now I know with Sarah's point of view, or at least I think so. So Sarah, if I'm talking from you, unofficially, please just say not quite what I would say. But when I've been learning a little bit about access consciousness, they talk in terms of saying like they do clearings, you know,
Mm,
with statements and things. And one of the
mhm,
things that I've found quite useful is to um, destroy, uncreate. Like, you know, like before I go to bed, I might say, okay, everything that was, you know, my viewpoint on
mm,
relationships, I'm going to destroy and uncreate it, with the idea that when you give yourself a clean slate, you can recreate everything in the morning
mhm.
fresh.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so I like the release, revoke, rescind,
Mhm,
any oath, vow, and agreement
mhm.
that's in
Yeah.
place. Thank you. And when you mentioned like looking at the oh, and she's saying yes, that's good. So I haven't put words in her mouth. That's perfect. Um, when you were talking about like intuitively looking at the contract, what came
Mhm,
up was the idea. I know some people have an idea that there's almost like a pull-out folder in the Akashic
mm,
records or in like a filing cabinet in the sky that you can access and look at things. As a
mhm,
kid, I used to dream that there was a little secret room in my cupboard, and it
mhm,
was in between 2 floors as well. I don't know how I visualized it, but when I got in there, I imagined that there were not DVDs, like VHS videos, because that was the time back then. But I
mm,
imagined I could put these VHS videos in this kind of mythical player and download information that a bit like Superman. You know, he'd go
mhm.
to the North Pole and put a crystal in, and all of a sudden out comes this new version. And I think there is that going on. You
Oh
have
god, yeah.
the ability to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're talking that we're in a place of end times.
Mhm.
What does that mean? Like, what does that give birth to?
Okay, so it would be
Like,
the ending of an old construct or an ending of an old structure or time period to move into the next phase. So, um, uh, from a linear perspective, I think I feel it was if we were looking at this through the Bible, we would look at the great flood of Noah's Ark, for example. That
yeah.
then ties back into the great floods of Atlantis, which was actually an explosion, but that's a different story for a different time. Um, it's just to keep it easier. We're looking at these parts of time where there would have been a mass taking out of civilization for it to then
Yeah.
collapse and start again. But in actuality, yes, partially that's true, but there is also a migration that happens as well, where new civilizations birth with higher states of consciousness, and it's almost like a sweeping away of the lesser than. Now, this again tied into an Atlantean epoch, which is where there was a lot of miscreant behavior that went on, a lot of reversal of the planetary gate systems, and with intent to harm and damage the Christos, the light body
Mhm.
people. But through this, there was a degrading of consciousness as well that happened. And now that we went through the lowest of the low, we're now coming back up the wave to start rising up the dimensional scale
Mhm.
into a higher, more evolved vibrational field.
Mhm.
Um, so in that sense, there's not any kind of destruction, so to speak. There are choice points which will happen at the end of time, whether they are ready to move on, or whether they're ready to stay, or they need to stay behind, or move on to a different place to continue their downward descent levels of growth, to come back up again. So really, it's just the end of time is just kind of like a juncture where the choices are whether we want to evolve or whether we want to stay and learn some more to get us back going up, essentially.
Okie dokes. And there are quite a few people that talk about like the idea of a bifurcation, of humanity, but not just humanity, but of plants, all living things, and energy. So I think that kind of matches the idea of the bifurcation, that some people like there's a choice in the road and people are choosing left or right. One of the things that has come into my consciousness, I guess, I was feeling really quite black and white, and right and wrong, good and bad, yes and no, very much so at the start of that time that was called the pandemic. By some. In recent times, I've realized that it's just been exhausting. And I just needed to give it up.
Right. I get that. Yeah, definitely.
I'm really sick of feeling really polar. I feel like I've been, it almost feels like I've been ripped apart.
Right.
Because I don't actually really, I don't know if I've seen complete evil or complete love. I've seen what I think looks like complete evil and what looks like complete love. But I've only seen it through the human potential and to the best of my abilities to see things. And it just occurs to me that until I can really walk in somebody else's shoes and know what's going on fully and completely, I don't know, I just felt like I've almost not wanted to judge. However, that's not to say I'm comfortable with people that are deliberately creating harm, but I'm choosing. I think where I am right now is I want to. It's a funny one because I accused my husband of what's the word? Earlier on in the last few years, I said, "Oh, you're just bypassing, you're bypassing, not acknowledging that there are some really awful things that have been going on." But now I feel like, you know what, I'm aware of a lot of things that go on and I can tune into it, feel it really quite vigorously. I can feel it. It's almost like an attack, a self-attack. But now I'm really just saying, okay, I know you exist and I'm choosing to not be in this polarity. I'm just trying to choose peace right now. How does that fit in? Have you come across many people going through a similar shift, or because it's quite difficult when you're trying to balance feeling like you live in a world of energetics whilst also having a foot in the real world that we experience through our human bodies?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost with the polarized field, I think it's important to question, is all of this mind? Because because then you're just,
that'd have been easier, wouldn't it?
You can still do it now. Actually, you can actually transform it today if you look back and you just say, okay, none of that actually resonates with what I'm feeling now, and understanding that it was a polarized field and everybody was within that polarized field, because polarity is a thing, and everyone's going to have their own understanding of what's going on, so it causes conflict. But when you can pull your essence back out of the polarized field, which is done with intention and it's done through visualization, seeing yourself coming back in, the layers of polarity will strip from your essence where it's kind of tied up, which then isolates your energy from that, and then you can seal. So that first and foremost is an important thing to kind of look at. But I think the second thing as well to question here is, what dimensional lens are you looking through when you're observing this? So if it's coming through a very physical perspective and you're observing your reality, and then also seeing that when remote viewing in that perspective? Are you looking through a third dimensional lens or a fourth dimensional lens, or do you want to try and start elevating it? As you shift the perspectives into a higher dimensional field, you're then going to go through levels of unification. You're going to go through levels of recognizing and seeing the blueprint of the divine plan, going more into a 10th to 12th dimensional field with that. And when you can kind of come into that perspective, you can see the whole landscape for the plan, and understand that it's actually just consciousness playing itself out. Right, when it's playing itself out, learning, growth and development, it actually goes into separation, and then as it goes down to the bottom, it then comes back up in the growth and development and unifies again through the 7th to 9th dimensional fields, and then back up. So it's all it's just a game of polarity and duality, really, in the in the lower constructs. Up
like
until above that.
The sacred in-breath and out-breath, like we have these periods of reunification, and we have these periods of like division.
Exactly, yeah.
That was a really good question you asked me, like where was I perceiving it from? Because I think at the start of that time, I was very much viewing everything through my physical body, and very much saying, definitely, that's not for me. Oh, that's bad. That's good. And judging everything very much from the perspective of fear for my family, for my children.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, totally get that. I mean, the instincts,
they were grown up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the instincts kick in and you go into a state of survivalism.
Yes.
So within that engages the reptilian brain, because you're going into, you need to survive, you've got to create security. And that is exactly what has gone on over the past 3 years. It was a complete destabilization of the root chakra. So when we look into that and we realize that that was what was playing out energetically for the collective to create a sense of destabilization to control and manipulate, right? And it's within that you can start to recognize the game, recognize the points of what is going on out there, for you then to call your energy back. And as you realize it, that trigger point of understanding acts as the healing. The fields become so super conscious that everything starts to rebuild and reorder, because your belief system has then changed.
Yes, absolutely. Right? I mean, at the start of, and thanks for explaining that, at the start of it, my first thought was, oh, this was what I was born for. This is why I'm here. Flipping out, been waiting my whole life. And then totally forgot that feeling, because went into fear, not because I thought I was going to get ill or anything like that. I just didn't believe that right from word go, really. Maybe for a few weeks. And then I was like, hang on, that doesn't make sense. But the fear that things might be pushed or forced and coerced, that was what I was pushing against. But you're right, like when I started to get all of a sudden, like, I don't know, I guess over the last year I've just been, this is exhausting, I'm getting sick, this isn't working for me, and then that's when my higher perspectives were coming in, and that's when I suddenly thought, oh, actually what's happening is perfect, even though as it's happening and playing out, lots of people are going into suffering, and lots of people are having difficulties. There was this feeling of, wow, this is actually perfect. This is what's meant to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Because everybody's going to have to go through it in their own experience for their own growth, first and foremost. That fear momentum has then kick drived everybody into a position where they're actually thinking, do you know what, third time round or 3 years later, I'm not going to take this. I don't need to take this. What I've understood and observed over the past 2 years, 3 years, is control. It is an attempt to take over. It's an attempt to destabilize consciousness and override the Christic potentials. But in actual fact, back then, it pushed everyone into helping each other. So why, in God's name, would they actually think it would work a second time around? I don't know. That's the narcissistic templates that run through their field, which make them believe that they're what they think is right consistently, and there is no other way. So, you know, within that, it's actually kind of sad when you look at it, their desperate attempt to make other people be like them, which it's when you can observe it in that sense, it's actually kind of sad that they've been forced and controlled into that system themselves.
Yes.
You know, and that's the kind of
There's no freedom there, is there? There might be
absolutely
a
not, no.
freedom of power and control, but that's not really freedom.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's like the level of compassion we can hold within it, but then understanding our own boundaries, like these people have done X, Y, and Z. We don't need to tolerate or take this. You've taken away levels of sovereignty of people that aren't aware, and that's not okay. So understanding from a compassionate perspective within yourself to maintain awareness of the whole plan, and then also holding a firm boundary that's not allowing this kind of abuse to take place anymore.
Yes.
That's the development from distorted masculine to sacred masculine. Right.
Yes,
So,
I love that
yeah.
you've mentioned the masculine and the feminine, and the distortion, because that's one of the things that I was actually saying to Carl last night. I've never actually really felt like I was a feminist, or actually I really wasn't that bothered about being a woman, other than I love how I've been able to become a mum. You know, I love that. Absolutely love it, and that's been the most transforming thing that's happened to me in this lifetime. But I've never really thought, oh, must stick with the ladies or anything like that. But in this last short while, with all the different conflicts and contrasts coming up, I feel like I've got a better sense of what it is to be me, and connect actually into my gender, even though there's so much going on right now about gender ideology that could, oh my goodness. And the funny thing is, you know, with each of these little shifts and narrative changes, there's always a seed of truth in it.
Yeah,
And then there's
absolutely.
always a massive distortion behind it as well, I think.
Yeah, 100%. There's always an overlay to try and manipulate and hijack the situation. I mean, even take feminism, for example.
Yeah.
It's pushed women into becoming ultra tough and masculine to push them away from their own role of softness and delicateness, you know. So that whatever they choose, it's absolutely fine. It makes no difference, because feminine roles play in multiple different ways. But the ideation that women need to not shave their armpits and go out and be really strong and not need a man, it's like it kind of, number one, it diminishes the role of the male to come in and protect the feminine.
Yes.
And number two, what we can see with the masculines at the moment is that they're going more down a feminine route, and being pushed into a kind of inversion of gender. So we've got a masculine feminine, and we've got a feminine masculine. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a complete reversal of the energetics, and then we can see that expand out through transgender roles. We can see that with the eradication of women's toilets, to make them, you know, acceptable for trans, when really, if we look into like the Indian communities going back into the hijras, they actually had their own, they were revered as their own sacred gender, because they were able to embody the masculine and the feminine. And then if we break that down even further, we go into epochs like Polaris, the Polarian epoch in the seeding on Earth, Hyperborean. They were actually a dual gender. It was a hermaphroditic race, which then only through Lemuria was when the separation of genders became a thing. So the templating that was held through Hyperborea, this then extends into today, of people revisiting the intersex, which I hate that word because it's taken away Hermes and Aphrodite that's been merged together for hermaphrodite, you know, and making it into something clinical and, you know, kind of breeding this kind of consciousness within that community that they're a freak show. You know,
I know somebody who was born intersex, who didn't find out for many, many years. And I think I know another person, and like they were assigned a gender at birth and assigned the wrong gender.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it must be devastating to have to go through that and work through that. I've heard of one person in London who had that, and she went off the rails a little bit. So yeah, it's very sad. But we've also got to remember that it is a templating and an experience in physical form as well. So yes, be compassionate, but also be understanding as to how this interlinks on a spiritual development level as well.
Yeah. Right. We've got some comments coming in,
Yeah.
and we're coming up to the end of an hour. So
Okay.
I know your time's precious, and I need to take the kids out on a day trip as well. So
Oh, that sounds fun.
go off to Lisbon today. That would be fun.
Ooh,
So,
sounds good.
Squire of the Shies is asking about what you've read. So let's see. He's saying there's an origin story in the temple of Edfu, Egypt, about the pure Diluvian ancestors called the Island of the Egg, possibly the source of the Atlantean story of Plato. Have you heard or read the book The Colbrin? Because I know you're really a lot more well-read than I am. You've explored different things, haven't you?
Well, I don't actually read at all.
You do?
No, I don't. I'm
It's all come from
really
downloads.
heavily dyslexic, so I don't read.
So it's all this stuff.
It's downloaded. Sometimes I get
Yeah.
guided to watch certain things, but it's predominantly it's downloaded and explored that way.
So it's all just what has come into you.
Yeah. And I always question myself and I'm sure I should be like able to understand a lot more or read a lot more or do this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, whenever I pick up a book, I have to put it back down again because it just makes me feel ill.
No, you should absolutely honor your learning style and your learning.
Thank you.
Everything that's being written has also been written by I think that things that we write often come through us, channeled through us.
Yeah.
It always picks up the flavor of the person writing it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I cannot read things. It just makes me feel ill. So,
well, that's fantastic. I may well look out for that. Thank you, Squire of the Shies. I'm quite fascinated by different things. And different times. I mean, one of the things that captured there's quite a few things that have captured my energy over the last few years. And it's interesting, captured my energy or got my attention.
Yeah.
I think there's probably some truth in them. And also that they're also there to distract me. Like things like Tartaria and all these other times. But there are lots of big questions out there, in terms of these massive houses with oversized doors and windows, all sorts of different things. There's so many unanswered questions, aren't there? Anita Cosgrove, I'm guessing, is somebody is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. She is from Ireland or Era. And I went and met with the group over there, and whilst I was doing grid work in March, I think it was March, in the equinox of March, was a grid work trip in Ireland. So yeah, it was amazing. Hi, Lisa.
Thanks, Anita, for joining us. It's absolutely lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. Squire of the Shies is actually saying we're the same. The book is on YouTube.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's very, very rare I can actually even pick up a book for more than one or two chapters. So yeah, I would definitely say trust your own innate gnosis, and that's going to be what's right for you to understand. Don't ever question it or do question it, because that's going to build your level to discern. But yeah, just download away. It will always come in.
Thanks for that top tip, both you, Felix, and also Squire of the Shies. I really appreciate that. Sarah is saying, how much does media and the company we keep affect our perception of reality? If media didn't exist, what would we have experienced over the past few years? Flipping heck, that's a good question.
That's a question, that is. It affects the majority because it overlays into the collective field, which then places distortion through the fields, even into reading the energetics. So if you can kind of knock through the distorted layers within that as well, you're then able to get to more truth. So, and if media didn't exist, this pandemic would not have happened. Yeah, no, not at all. Absolutely not at all. It's a black box program. It's one that connecting into the Saturnian black cube matrix, and it is essentially designed to distort your own energetic frequencies and also keep you in a state of kind of dullness in the mind. So even if you come away from that, the mind is still susceptible to mind control after being on it. This is why I love things like YouTube and seeing chats like Louisa's, like yours, Louisa, or other people's stuff, when it's coming from their own development, there's no overlays held within that. Par a few, maybe.
Yeah.
So there can be a couple, but
Of
you're
course.
going to be guided to the people who you're guided to, rather than with the TV, you're given 5 channels or however many channels there is. I don't own a TV, so I don't know. However many channels there are, that you can only watch this, or this. So that is how it kind of gets. And the same thing with Netflix as well. I mean, it's
Oh my goodness.
utter shite. Like, it really is. It's not doing you any good. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because I think actually now TV doesn't have that much power. I just think Netflix and YouTube have got the market share of attention.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Things are really changing, and I think that's actually it's really actually quite exciting, because like the news channels don't have quite the same influence. People are absolutely getting their sense of what's going on from a much more vast selection of things. Squire of the Shires is saying, the Cube, Saturn, just getting interesting. Future show. Yeah, sure, we can do that. Do you want to come on sometime, Squire of the Shires? Let me know. Stay in contact about that. Let's do it. I'm very happy to do something like that. Brilliant. So in rounding up then, Felix, it's really nice having you back on, and I'm so pleased that you've moved, and you've obviously got a partner now as well since we were last in touch. Yeah.
Partner and children.
Yes. So happiness, can it be sustained in the face of adversity? I don't think we can actually really truly answer this, but it's like an ongoing question. But what final thoughts would you like to share?
I would say it's down to your perception, and it's down to how you choose to place your energy and your time and effort, and how you recognize your own identity within that. So if you identify with the adversity, or you allow it to hook into you, then you're going to be faced with it. And if not, you can recognize that it's there, but choose to engage in joy, choose to engage in happiness, choose to engage in love, and then absolutely you can sustain happiness in the face of adversity.
Yes.
So that's what I'd say to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great topic.
Actually, I have to say, like, whenever, and this is awful to say, but whenever I've like gone through a grief or something, and had some really hard times, one of the things that I do notice is almost like I can feel my heartbeat a lot more. It wakes me up. It's so painful. Like, when you feel something so painful, all of a sudden it does kind of, it wakes you up from the slumber you might have been in. And I've always been very, very grateful for that. Every time I say something like that, I then say, I'm not asking you to bring me more grief. I do put that out there, like, oh yeah, I love grief. It's helpful. Don't want any more.
Nah, I'm good, thanks.
I think these times have definitely brought out something a lot more. Whilst we may have got ourselves hooked back into other systems of thought, I think it has also temporarily jolted quite a few people as well.
God, yeah, definitely. So I feel like it was needed to kind of accelerate people's growth and development. And it's something we can't always escape from with these things. It's just a case of learning how to adapt, because humans are very easily adaptable. And that's the beauty of our own evolution. We adapt to our environments to make things work. And that's the great thing. And if we can kind of keep a happy face within that, and recognizing that this is for our growth and for our evolution, then that's how we can kind of accelerate it. And it's within the gratitude that it helps it move through faster.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Gratitude is such a mobilizer, a lubricant,
absolutely.
Isn't it?
Oh god, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Wow.
It's the Durex of emotions. Or whatever it's called.
I don't know about Durex. I would say it's like the lubricant, like the KY jelly.
Oh right, that's the one I meant. But
it helps things spin a bit easier.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Cool.
Oh,
Well,
bless.
I'm so grateful for you today, and for
Me
everyone
too.
that stuck around, and for those people that were probably a little bit shocked and I thought, okay, I'm curious, and stuck around too. Whether you've been watching live, I'm grateful for that little fly jumping around.
Yeah,
I'm actually
definitely.
not really, unless he's giving me a download.
You never know.
Yes, who knows? I'm really grateful for everyone that's listening in after as well. So let us know your comments as well. That'd be great. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back again soon. I'm going to run the outro now, but will you just
Okay.
stay in the green room so I can have a little chat with you?
Yeah, no problem.
Excellent. Well, thank you to everyone that's joined us today. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Have a great weekend, and let us know for other show ideas and things like that. Your comments, it all helps to create this, and I think what's been started is really quite special. I think this is I'm loving it, and I'm hopeful this is really useful. Lots of love. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, what happened there?